Hey folks, in this video, I'll be talking about 3 different games for 3 different situations that you can work into one of your nights for your campaign. I always really enjoy when there's sort of a game, something with a new mechanic in the session, whether that's going to a gambling party or there's a festival or anything like that. I always think it's really neat when there's sort of like a mini game or a side quest game that has its mechanics, and yeah, you're making your checks and you're rolling your dice, but it's a little different than normal. And so I wanted to give you 3 games that you can incorporate depending on the different situations or places that your players find themselves in. The first game is for a festival. Maybe your players are in a town or on a space station. These are all pretty agnostic type games. But they find themselves at a festival, a celebration of some kind, and it is a pie eating contest. Now, you as the GM, you can flavor this however you want it to be. They could be savory meat pies, or they could be, lemon meringue pies, or mushroom pies, or whatever, or maybe a combination of lots of different things. And all of these games, I'm going to give you the mechanics that I've used in the past, but you can probably find some ways to tweak them here or there, or change the flavor text, if you will, to make it fit the session that you're running. So for a pie eating contest, the way that I like to run that game is that they're eating little hand pies, like a Cornish pasty or something like that. And the game is played over 10 rounds. Feel free to adjust that depending on how long your session's running or things like that. Each round that your player or players are involved in the pie eating contest, they have a few different options that they can choose from. Now, they can eat 1 pie, and that requires no check whatsoever. They could try to eat 2 checks, which you have a DC of 10. You can go for 3 pies, which has a DC of 14, or you can go for 4 pies, which has a DC of 16. By the way, in a game like D&D, I just kind of go with a constitution check here. Depending on the system you're running, use whatever attribute makes sense here. Each round, they score as many points as they eat number of pies. But here's the thing. If they fail one of their checks, the player earns a gag. In the process of eating their pie, they almost lose it. And after 3 gags, up comes all of those pies, and that player is disqualified. At the end of the 10 rounds, whoever ate the most pies wins. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. Your player could try to keep it safe, especially if they're well in the lead. They could just slowly eat the 1 pie, and there's no check to be made there. There is another thing as far as options go that I like to throw in. They could spend a round in order to take a drink of ale or wine or lemonade or water or whatever it is that character has. Now, for that round, they score 0 points. But taking a drink allows them to remove 1 gag. So there you go. 10 rounds, numbers of pies with varying difficulty, and at the end of 10 rounds, the one that finishes the most pies with no regurgitation wins. The setting for the next game that I like to use is sort of like a grungy bar. Maybe it's the bar on some sort of station where the local gang is in charge. Or maybe it's the tavern that's really a front for the local thieves guild. Think of it something like that. And the game, I tend to call it shot for shot. And the idea is kind of along the line of darts. The player is engaged against one of the NPCs that usually will represent the faction. They use daggers and they're throwing them at a board. The board has different rings, allowing them to score 1, 2, or 5 points. But between each throwing round, the characters are also taking shots of alcohol. Now, if you've got some types of races and ancestries in your games that are able to accommodate alcohol faster, well, obviously that would be well known amongst that world, and accommodations can get made. You as the GM, you can come up with some clever things to get around that. So here's the things as far as mechanics goes. Every 2 rounds, the alcohol causes the characters to become a little bit more inebriated. The easy thing to do there is to simply increase the armor class of the points, or maybe add a negative or something like that to the throw. I tend to go with upping the armor class by 1 every 2 rounds, but as a GM, let the alcohol's effects be something creative you can come up with. Plus, I like the fact that that character, at least, they're going to be inebriated for the rest of that scene. So when it comes to RP later, keep that one in mind. Here's the other thing about this one. The daggers, well, it's a special set of daggers, and they're misweighted. You can also flavor this differently, that it might be a pistol or a blaster that is weighted differently. Whatever the case is, unbeknownst to the player at first, the special daggers have a -1 to the throw. So that's pretty simply it. I like to give the DC of 12, an armor class of 12, to 1 point, 14 for 2 points, and 18 for 5 points. And however many numbers around backs and forth makes sense to you. I usually go with 6 rounds. That gives you 3 times where the alcohol makes everything more difficult. You can wager money, you can wager favors. I even once had it where one of the local bar patrons grabbed an innocent bystander and put them up in front of the board. The inebriation and the more difficult throws meant that if our players really messed up, somebody could get hurt. An important thing to note is, for this game, the players need to call their shots. Otherwise, there would be no reason for them to say anything other than, oh, well, I'll try for 1 point, but if they roll a nat 20, then they get all 5 points. No, I always make it clear that one of the rules of this game is you have to call the shot. Meaning, if you say, well, I'm going to go for 1 point, you have to land right on the correct score. If you go over, it doesn't work. You've got to hit the number directly. Sort of think of it as Price is Right rules. It does make it a little bit more difficult, but hey, that's part of the fun. And it's a front for a thieves guild. Who said that the game was going to be fair? A quick thank you to all of our patrons, and a special thanks to Marty. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a patron, head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative. All right, back to the video. Our third game is set up as a sort of deal with a devil or some other kind of metaphysical foe that has sway over the souls of your character. I really like using this one if we're in Avernus or the Hells or something like that. And essentially, it's Liar's Dice. The rules for Liar's Dice are pretty easy to find out there, but here's how it goes. A set of 5 dice and a cup. You shake them up and slam them down on the table, keeping them hidden. And we wager back and forth between the 2 or 3 or 4 of us what I can win with. But your dice are kept secret. So I might peek at my dice and I have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 6. No, that was too many dice. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Not a great throw. But nobody knows what I have. I can lie. And I could open the game up and say, I've got a pair of 4s. We then go around the table, and the demon next to me might say, oh, I can beat that easily. I have a pair of 5s. I might want to call his bluff, and I say, prove it. And then we would show our dice. But you have to have what you said you had. It's kind of how Liar's Dice work. What I like to do with this game is that even though you don't know what the others have, you know what you have. And by sacrificing attribute points for a temporary amount of time, up to you how long as the DM, by sacrificing attribute points, the players are able to change the dice that their characters have thrown. It's a pretty big risk, and throughout the game, the characters do need to make adjustments both in some of their throws and interactions and roleplay for sacrificing a point of constitution or 2 points of wisdom in order to change their dice. They're able to sacrifice 2 points of an attribute in order to change the dice of someone else playing. It's a high risk, high reward type situation. And again, you as the GM can decide how long those points are temporarily missing. I usually roll a die myself, and those points are missing anywhere from 1 to 5 days, something like that. I tend to roll like a D4 plus 1, and that's how long those points are missing. And I don't let the players know ahead of time. So, Demons, Liars, Dice. It's a pretty fun game. There's one more game that I wanted to be able to give you today to be able to play, but the truth is I couldn't figure out the mechanics of it. I want a game that you can play at a high noble situation, like a gala at the palace or something like that. So here's the game that I'm thinking of, and I would love to hear from all of you. What are the mechanics of how this game works? Essentially, I'm calling it Rumors Chess. The idea is this. There is a chessboard in front of 2 players. There are 5 or 6 pieces that are common to that realm. A pawn, a clergyman, the regent, the duchess. Think of it that way. Pawn, knight, bishop, king, and queen. You can flavor the names however it is that fits for your game. Well, the idea is that as you move each piece, it doesn't really matter how that piece moves. It's the fact that every time you move a piece, you state something as fact having to do with it. So if I were to move a knight and put it in the space next to the queen, I would be the one saying, you know, this knight, recognizable by his green armor, spends an awful lot of time around the queen's chambers, even when he's not on duty, and it's been noticed by quite a few people. This is a rumor that my character has picked up on, this affair between the captain of the guard and the queen regent. My character is slyly, not so subtly, talking about this rumor, and it is the reaction of all of those around us that say who has scored a point that round. I don't really know how to make that work. Is it a roll off of charisma? That seems easy. Do I try to have some kind of wild Sherlock Holmes moment where I pick up on clues with a wisdom check and then come up with something to say? Do my opponents score the points? Does the crowd? I think we've got a good idea here, but I don't know the rules. So in the comments below, you tell me what they should be. And who knows? I might run it in one of our next streaming games. So there you have it, folks. 3, maybe 4 different mini games that you can play in different situations in your next campaign. Do you have specific mini games that you love to play? And do you have ideas for the Rumors Chess? Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, I'm Ryan, and thanks for watching. This is Roll for Initiative. Bye. I can't move. I'm on my mark. I can't move my feet. No! I lost my balance.